Nearly 42 years ago, Ocean Ranger, the world's largest semi-submersible offshore oil drilling rig at the time, faced nature's fury in a way no one could have predicted. In this video, we'll explore the Deadliest Wave, the unforgettable tragedy that killed 84 men. Built to withstand the harsh North Atlantic, the Ocean Ranger boasted cutting-edge technology for its time. We'll dive into the events leading up to the disaster, the dramatic rescue attempts, and the operation that followed. Stay tuned until the end as we also discuss the aftermath of the tragedy and its global impact on the oil industry. So let's dive in and uncover the story. Background and context. The disaster took place on the Grand Banks of Newfoundland, Canada, an area known for its dangerous conditions in the North Atlantic. This offshore oil field held valuable resources, but also presented significant risks due to its harsh and unpredictable environment. The North Atlantic is notorious for severe storms, high winds, and freezing temperatures, especially in winter. Massive waves over 60 feet could suddenly hit, making it an extremely challenging area for any vessel, especially an oil rig. The 84-man crew on the Ocean Ranger dealt with these tough conditions every day. Their work was demanding, with long shifts, tough tasks, and constant awareness of the dangers of offshore drilling. Despite the risks, many of the men were experienced workers, used to the rig's routine. Life on the rig was often lonely and repetitive, as the crew spent weeks far from their families, surrounded by miles of open sea. The rig was considered the most advanced of its kind, giving the crew a sense of security. Yet, despite its technological advancements, the men on board knew that nature's power could not be underestimated. Little did they know that on that night, the very forces they faced every day would tragically take their lives in one of the deadliest maritime disasters. The events leading to the disaster. On the night of February 14, 1982, the Ocean Ranger encountered a severe storm off the coast of Newfoundland. The storm brought powerful winds and waves up to 60 feet high, posing a significant threat to the rig and its crew. Around 7 p.m., the Ocean Ranger experienced technical problems as water entered the ballast control room, leading to critical issues with the rig's stability systems. Despite the crew's efforts, the situation worsened as the rig began to tilt due to the growing waves. During the chaos, communication between the Ocean Ranger and nearby support vessels became unreliable, hampered by the storm's interference, making rescue efforts challenging. Despite the crew's best efforts, they were unable to regain control of the rig. By midnight, the Ocean Ranger had taken on too much water, and at 1:30 a.m., it capsized and sank into the turbulent waters of the North Atlantic. Unfortunately, all 84 crew members on board lost their lives in one of the worst offshore disasters in history, due to equipment failures, communication difficulties, and the relentless storm. The disaster. The Ocean Ranger faced its devastating end as it began to capsize amid the brutal North Atlantic storm. A massive wave, towering over 60 feet high, slammed into the rig with immense force. This sudden impact caused severe damage to the rig's structure and its ballast control systems. As the Ocean Ranger tilted dangerously, the crew was thrown into a frantic struggle for survival. They rushed to fix the damage and stabilize the rig to prevent it from toppling over. Despite activating emergency protocols, the severe damage and fierce storm made their efforts almost futile. The crew worked tirelessly to repair the damaged systems and secure the rig. But the enormous waves and unrelenting winds made their task nearly impossible. Compounding the crisis was the crew's lack of preparation for such a massive emergency. Many had never experienced a situation of this magnitude and were overwhelmed by the chaos and urgency. Additionally, the life-saving equipment on board was inadequate. The survival suits and life rafts, which were supposed to be crucial in emergencies, weren't designed to handle the extreme conditions, making evacuation even more difficult. As the rig continued to roll over, the situation grew increasingly desperate. Despite their best efforts, the crew could not stop the Ocean Ranger from sinking. The combination of poor training, inadequate equipment, and the powerful storm resulted in the tragic loss of all men on board, making it one of the deadliest offshore oil rig disasters ever. Rescue and recovery efforts. The rescue and recovery efforts following the sinking of the Ocean Ranger were brave but ultimately heartbreaking. As soon as nearby ships and Coast Guard stations received distress signals, rescue operations were launched. The standby vessels Seaforth Highlander and Norder Tor were the first to respond. heading toward the site of the sinking. They battled fierce storms to reach the rig, hoping to help the crew. However, the powerful storm made rescue almost impossible. Winds were raging at over 90 kilometers per hour, and waves up to 60 feet tall pounded the ships, making it extremely dangerous to get close to the rig. Visibility was poor due to darkness and heavy rain, making it difficult to find any survivors. Rescue helicopters from the Canadian Coast Guard also tried to assist, but the storm was so severe that many couldn't take off, limiting crucial air support. As time passed, hope began to fade. The freezing waters of the North Atlantic were deadly, and even with survival gear, the men could not survive for long in such extreme conditions. The rescuers continued to search, but the storm scattered lifeboats and debris over vast distances, making it hard to spot anyone. When the first wreckage was found, the reality became clear: there were no survivors. Bodies started to surface, and the full scale of the tragedy hit hard. Despite the best efforts of the Canadian and U.S. Coast Guards and rescue teams, all men aboard the Ocean Ranger had perished. The loss was devastating for the families, the oil industry, and the nation. It was clear that the rescue equipment, including life rafts and survival suits, was not fit for the harsh North Atlantic conditions. The combination of the severe weather, equipment failure, and lack of proper training left the men with little chance of survival. In the days following, the recovery mission shifted to retrieving the bodies of the lost crew and any remaining wreckage. The sunken Ocean Ranger became a tragic symbol of one of the deadliest offshore oil rig disasters in history. The disaster and the failed rescue efforts prompted a nationwide investigation and major changes to safety standards in offshore drilling to prevent such a tragedy from ever happening again. Aftermath and impact. The aftermath of the Ocean Ranger disaster deeply affected the oil industry, devastated the families of the men who lost their lives, and left the public in shock. The sinking of the world's largest semi-submersible oil rig revealed major flaws in offshore safety, leading to widespread outrage and demands for answers. Families and the public called for immediate action to ensure such a tragedy would never happen again. In response, the Canadian and U.S. governments launched thorough investigations into the disaster. These inquiries uncovered critical issues with the rig's design, safety equipment, and crew training. Some of the key problems included malfunctioning ballast control systems, poor emergency procedures, and survival suits that weren't suited to the harsh conditions of the North Atlantic. Communication between the rig and rescue teams also proved to be a major failure, contributing to the loss of life. As a result, significant changes were made to offshore safety regulations. New, stricter standards for oil rig design were introduced, focusing on improving ballast control systems and overall structural integrity. Emergency procedures were revamped to ensure that crews received proper evacuation training. Life-saving equipment, including survival suits and life rafts, was upgraded to withstand severe weather conditions. These reforms reshaped the oil industry, making it safer for workers and aimed at preventing future tragedies like the Ocean Ranger disaster. Legacy. The disaster left a lasting impact, marked by both deep sadness and important changes. Memorials were set up to honor the men who lost their lives, with plaques and monuments in Newfoundland and elsewhere. These memorials offer a place for families and the public to pay their respects and remember the tragedy. Despite these advancements, the human cost of the Ocean Ranger disaster remains a powerful reminder of the risks involved in offshore drilling. The tragedy led to crucial changes in safety protocols, but the pain for the families who lost loved ones endures. The legacy of the Ocean Ranger continues to shape the oil industry today, emphasizing the need for rigorous safety measures to prevent such a catastrophic loss of life in the future. The disaster also catalyzed a broader industry-wide reassessment of offshore drilling practices. The rigorous new safety standards and improved technologies implemented in the wake of the tragedy have since become integral to the industry's operational procedures. These changes, driven by the lessons learned from this catastrophic event, aim to ensure that such a disaster is less likely to occur again. Conclusion. The Ocean Ranger disaster serves as a powerful reminder of the extreme risks in the quest for energy. The tragic loss of 84 lives highlights the urgent need for stricter safety measures and better regulations in offshore drilling. As we honor the bravery of those who faced unimaginable challenges, it's clear that pursuing energy can come with serious costs. What are your thoughts on the balance between energy needs and safety? Share your views in the comments below. If you found this video insightful, please like, share, and subscribe to our channel for more content on impactful stories and important topics.